Hello, I'm Nadia Jani and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. I don't want to have a wasted meeting, says Donald Trump after Budapest summit is put on hold. Russia launches a large-scale missile assault on Ukraine, striking multiple cities, including Kyiv. And Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan calls Azerbaijan's decision to lift transit restrictions a major step towards peace. Good evening. First, the proposed second summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin has been postponed indefinitely. The White House says there is little prospect for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine at this stage. The cancellation of the Budapest meeting highlights the growing diplomatic deadlock between the two countries. Our correspondent, Obey Shabanda, has more.
What was intended to be a second summit between President Trump and Russian leader Vladimir Putin is now postponed for the foreseeable future. The meeting was to take place in Budapest, Hungary, but officials say that the White House believes that the prospects for a deal between Russia and Ukraine to end the war remain slim. And there remains a major gap between Russian and Ukrainian demands, with Russia believing that they can still manage a breakthrough on the battlefield. President Trump recently met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky earlier in the week, where he told him that he wants Russia and Ukraine to stop the war at the current front lines. Behind closed doors, the meeting in the White House was described by those in the know as being tense. The Kremlin is insisting that Ukraine withdraw from strategic fortified positions in the eastern Donbass region. And a phone call between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also took place earlier in the week, but yielded no agreement in a meeting or towards a summit between Putin and Trump. Mark Rutte, the head of the NATO military alliance, will be meeting Trump this week to discuss European support for Ukraine and joint efforts to end the war. Trump told reporters on Tuesday that he does not want to have a, quote, wasted meeting with Putin in Budapest, given the current impasse. Trump called the conflict a vicious war and told the media that he still believes that there's a chance for a ceasefire in Ukraine. I'm Ube Shabander, A News, Washington.
Russia launched a large-scale overnight assault on Ukraine, firing over 400 drones and 28 missiles, including 15 ballistic ones, Ukrainian officials have said. Air defense units reported shooting down or jamming 349 aerial targets. Kyiv was the main target, with fires and debris killing 4 people, including 2 children. In Kharkiv, a drone hit a kindergarten, killing 1 and injuring 6. Drones also struck Odessa's Izmail port, damaging energy and cargo facilities. Several other regions were also hit in the heaviest attacks in the week. The assault followed Ukraine's strike on Russia's Bryansk chemical plant. Turning to Gaza, and US Vice President J.D. Vance met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Wednesday. Washington is moving forward with the next stage of its Gaza peace plan, focused on disarming Hamas and sending in an international security team.
As the Prime Minister said, these are days of destiny, and we're very excited to sit down and work together on the Gaza peace plan. We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas, but rebuild Gaza to make life better for the people in Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel. That's not easy. I think the Prime Minister knows that as well as anybody, but it's something that we're committed to in the Trump administration. And I think we've, even in the past 24 hours, had a lot of good conversations with our friends in the Israeli government, but also, frankly, with our friends in the Arab world who are stepping up and volunteering to play a very positive role in this.
US President Donald Trump is set to visit Japan later this month, his first trip there since returning to office. It was confirmed Trump will visit from the 27th to the 29th of October, meeting Emperor Naruhito and newly elected Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi. He added that Japan views the visit as a chance to strengthen the US-Japan alliance and advance cooperation in free and open Indo-Pacific. Trump last visited Japan in 2019. The Louvre in Paris has reopened 3 days after 4 thieves broke into the museum at the weekend. Visitors queued to enter through the Louvre's glass pyramid for the first time since Sunday's daylight robbery, stealing historic jewellery worth around 88 million euros. French authorities have come under growing pressure to address security lapses at the famous cultural institution. China is exploring a trilateral currency swap with Japan and South Korea to boost regional financial cooperation and reduce reliance on the US dollar. Our correspondent Manur Makdoum has more from Beijing.
China is exploring a trilateral currency swap arrangement with Japan and South Korea as part of its ongoing effort to strengthen regional financial cooperation and reduce reliance on the US dollar. The move comes amid escalating trade tensions triggered by US President Donald Trump's tariff measures against Chinese and other Asian exports, which have added pressure on East Asian economies already navigating fragile recoveries. Beijing's proposal aims to facilitate direct settlement in local currencies, primarily the yuan, yen, and won, across regional trade and investment flows. Historically, China, Japan, and South Korea have had strained relations, rooted in territorial disputes, wartime history, and strategic mistrust. However, Washington's increasingly protectionist stance and confrontational trade policies have driven them towards a greater pragmatic cooperation. In recent years, trilateral talks have gradually resumed, focusing on trade stability, technology supply chains, and now financial integration. The proposed swap mechanism is being viewed as a symbolic and practical step towards a regional resilience. It highlights a shift in East Asia's economic calculus from competing under US-dominated financial systems to building alternative structures that reflect shared interest. For China, this marks both a strategic counter to US trade pressures and a step forward in consolidating its influence over Asia's financial architecture. Mathum, A News, Beijing.
North Korea fired several short-range ballistic missiles a week before world leaders are set to gather in South Korea for an Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff reported that the missiles were launched from an area near Pyongyang in a northeasterly direction. It marks North Korea's first ballistic missile test since May. Peru's interim President José Herri has declared a 30-day state of emergency in the capital Lima and the neighboring province of Callao to combat surging crime. The measure authorizes the deployment of armed forces alongside police to maintain public order. Addressing the nation, Peru's president pledged to restore peace, tranquility and trust. The decision follows nationwide protests last week that left 1 person dead and more than 100 injured. Herri, who took office earlier this month after the ousting of former President Dina Boluarte, has made tackling crime his administration's top priority. Welcome back to A News. Now to the meeting that never was. US President Donald Trump has said he did not want a wasted meeting after a plan to have face-to-face talks with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, about the war in Ukraine were put on hold. The US President indicated that a key sticking point remained Moscow's refusal to cease fighting along the current front line in remarks at the White House on Tuesday. Here to unpack this now is political analyst Alexandra Filipenko. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
My first question is, where do we go from here? We have a cancelled meeting, increased air attacks on Ukraine, and we are no closer to a peace agreement. What happens next?
Well, first of all, just right now in the Senate, in the Foreign Relations Committee, they will discuss, the senators, although there's government shutdown, they will discuss 3 laws, potentially 3 laws, 3 bills as of now, regarding Russia pressure. And I must say that one of the most important meetings of the day will be meeting of President Trump with Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. Right now, we understand that Mark Rutte is in Washington in order to present Europe's position. He is there to present the plan from Europe for Kiev and the war in Ukraine. And the White House press pool confirmed that there will be a 12-point plan that includes a ceasefire along the current front lines that Russia doesn't want, security guarantees for Ukraine, increased military aid to Kiev, a fund for Ukraine's recovery, and other points in this plan. So right now, Europe is trying to take a stance and trying to be the leader in actually moving President Trump away further, as far away as possible from the idea of a one-on-one summit in Budapest that President Trump floated the idea of, but State Secretary Rubio obviously was the one who put an end, or at least put that plan on.
And what are now, following on from that, what are the current options that the US, Europe and Ukraine can use against Putin to help move their agenda forward?
As of now, the United States realize, even if we talk about just those potential new sanctions, even just about those potential bills that are being discussed right now as we speak in Foreign Relations Committee, these are bills, for example, a bill designating the Russian Federation as a state sponsor of terrorism act. The authors are Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, and this is the idea in order to pressure Russia on the international stage. It demands that Russia will be recognized as a state sponsor of terrorism if Moscow does not return all Ukrainian children who were forcibly taken to Russian territory. The second bill that converts frozen Russian assets into regular payments to Ukraine every 90 days, regardless of any Budapests, regardless of any productive calls, as the State Department, for example, called the call between Marco Rubio and Sergei Lavrov. Obviously, it was not productive. And the Stop Russia and China Act of 2025, a bill by senators that will actually pressure China and Chinese organizations that support Russian military economies, such as microchip manufacturers, the carriers, the freight carriers, the trade intermediaries, etc. So there are opportunities to pressure Russia right now, and the United States are looking into it. Even though there's government shutdown, those bills are being introduced into Congress, and that's important. This will give leverage to President Trump if he wants to sign them, of course, or even just to have them as the pressure point for Russia, because we see that Putin obviously is not ready to move an inch closer to the US position, Ukraine's position, European position, in order to stop on the front line, stop as the armies are right now.
And with that, after Trump's success in Gaza and how the ceasefire took place there, things look a lot different on this side of the globe. And obviously he's not been able to get a win with creating a ceasefire with Ukraine. Why has this been so difficult for President Donald Trump?
I think the main difference here is that Putin and Trump look at the situation absolutely from different angles. What are we hearing right now from, for example, Sergei Lavrov, and why the Budapest meeting was canceled or postponed? Because we've heard from the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs all the same rhetoric that we've been hearing from 2014. Nothing new, nothing changed, actually. The illusion that Russia is ready to move somewhere is no longer at the White House. They understand the situation as it is, because to be honest, nothing changed for Russia. They didn't move. So right now, as of now, root causes, neutrality for Ukraine, no NATO, elections under occupation. The scenario is the same. Familiar cocktail that expects Ukraine basically to give up its territory in exchange for quote unquote peace that no one knows how long will last. And right now, President Trump looks at this situation from absolutely different standpoint. Those root causes, no NATO, neutrality for Ukraine, this is ideology. Donald Trump looks at the situation from the financial standpoint. Great opportunities, great possibilities to make deals with Russia. Yes, we must understand that President Trump wants to make deals with Russia, not only with Europe, not only with Ukraine, not only with other countries, with Russia too. And President Trump thinks that if he offers some business deals, there is this opportunity, this possibility to end the war. But for Putin, it's ideology. For Putin, it's the restoration of the great Russian Empire or Soviet Empire, whatever you want to call it. For him, ideology is way more important than any business deals or any business opportunities or many financial opportunities for Russia in general, because of course, and that Putin lives in absolutely different from all the Russians, and his oligarchs and people close to Putin live in absolutely different reality. They absolutely do not understand what's happening on the ground. So this two worldviews, totally different worldviews from different planetary worldviews or universally different, they cannot come together. And that is why I think President Trump has so many difficulties with overcoming this understanding, this looking at Russia as a state that can really think about its own financial stability or its own financial interests. No. Russian government, Kremlin is basically only thinking about ideology and restoring the greatness of Russia.
Well, going on from that, Russia seems to be still quite optimistic and still wants to meet with Donald Trump. Is that just for show? Obviously, is it just a meeting for a meeting's sake if nothing is going to be agreed in order to stop the war in Ukraine?
It's a meeting for a photo op's sake. Of course, Putin wants to shake hands with Trump. He wants to look at himself as not an isolated leader, but a leader of the world, also part of those great leaders, a superpower. He sees Russia as a superpower. Also, he wants to reinforce the illusion that Europe is divided within itself. He really wanted that meeting to take place in Budapest because Hungary is a member of NATO, Hungary is the member of the European Union, and the leader of Hungary is happy to play the role of the mediator with Moscow. So this would reinforce the illusion that Europe is divided, that there are those warmongers in NATO and warmongers in the European Union, while other European countries are happy to make deals with Russia. So for Putin, it looked really good from the PR standpoint. So that is why he really wants to meet Trump, and it would be great for Putin to meet in Europe to win in those two fields. First of all, in his own PR field, showing him not as an isolated leader, not as an isolated, and Russia not as an isolated country, but part of those great world countries, and also to showcase that Europe is divided and actually not all European countries want to continue supporting Ukraine.
But with all of that, with obviously Putin's big idea of ideology and a greater Russia and moving on with that, and obviously he's very close with China, which the US is not an ally, a strong ally with. Where do we go in regards to what Putin really wants? He wants Ukraine, he wants to be seen as this big, global leader on the world stage. But is he going about it in the right way? Because clearly he hasn't been able to take Ukraine, and it's been a 3-year-long war so far.
And as we know, at the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, because the war actually started in 2014, so with the full-scale invasion, Russia has first been saying that they will take Kyiv in 3 days. And we're hearing the same thing from President Trump, that according to some reports, Russia was supposed to take Ukraine for a week. And right now, if Russia's army moves at the same pace as it's moving right now, it will take 103 years to take the whole of Ukraine, or it will take a long time in any case. So we understand that things are not going according to Russia's plan, but at the same time, as you noted, there is China. There is this ally, we can put it this way, an ally. Russia sees China as its ally, of course, and that is why one of the bills that right now is being presented in the Senate is the Stop Russia and China Act of 2025 that actually aims to show to China that the neutral support comes at a price. And Putin understands that for China, it's a great thing for war to go on because China gets cheap resources from Russia. China turmoil in Europe. China gets President Trump that is not concentrated on Asia Pacific, who is concentrated on Europe and on the European Union and on war in Europe. So President Trump is busy. The United States are busy while China is gaining more influence. And China is getting cheap resources from Russia and selling everything to Russia and buying everything from Russia. So China is actually a winner here. So Putin sees that, he understands that, and he is ready to go on, maybe not for 103 years, although, as we know, after he plans to live up to 150 years, or at least he's discussing that. But still, he is ready to go on. He is ready to go on because Russia is a big country and there are many people who are ready to go on with that military conflict, and he's ready to go on with China's support. So China is a big player here, and President Trump doesn't want to pressure China too much as of now, at least up until the United States don't have a trade agreement with China.
Yes, well, there's still a lot to play for in regarding to that. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for your insights, Ms. Filipenko. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories impacting the region. The first day of the 5th Tbilisi Silk Road Forum has concluded, marking a pivotal moment for regional cooperation and the vision of transforming the South Caucasus into a vital bridge between Europe and Asia. Our correspondent Nini Nikolashevi reports.
Under the theme Connecting Economies, Building a Sustainable Future, the two-day forum gathered more than 2,200 delegates from over 70 countries, including the prime ministers of Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia for high-level talks on transport, energy, and investment. The opening session set a historic tone. For the first time, the leaders of all three South Caucasus nations shared the stage, highlighting how dialogue and reconciliation are reshaping the regional agenda. Peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan was described as a foundation for new connectivity, unlocking routes and opportunities that had been stalled for decades. At the center of this discussion stood the Middle Corridor, a strategic transport and logistics route linking China and Central Asia with Europe. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Qobakhidze emphasized his country's growing role as the region's gateway while reaffirming strong cooperation with Azerbaijan. Over past 2 years, cargo movement along the corridor has surged by 90%, a clear sign of renewed regional momentum. For Azerbaijan, Prime Minister Ali Asadov underlined new initiatives to diversify routes, including the corridor connecting mainland Azerbaijan with Nakhchivan, a link expected to strengthen transit capacity across the South Caucasus.
The two countries also reconfirmed their shared goal of building a stable, cooperative, and economically integrated region. Georgia's Deputy Prime Minister and Economy Minister Mariam Krivishvili outlined a set of flagship infrastructure projects designed to support the vision: the modernization of Georgian railways, construction of the Anaklia deep-sea port, expansion of airports, and the development of the €3 billion Black Sea submarine cable, an ambitious project that will connect Georgia and Europe through both digital and energy networks. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Staying on this topic, Armenia also announced its readiness to allow truck transit between Turkey and Azerbaijan. The move is seen as a significant for restoring trust and boosting economic ties in the region. The project is important not only economically, but also for peace and stability. Here's what Armenian Prime Minister had to say.
Starting today, we are ready to ensure the transit of trucks from Turkey to Azerbaijan and from Azerbaijan to Turkey through Armenia. This major project is not only economic, but also a significant step towards peace and stability. One of its outcomes will be the opening of the peace route connecting Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. The President of Azerbaijan has taken a very important and positive step. This decision holds great importance for restoring trust and developing economic ties in the region. Peace in the region is of utmost importance. Building connections and expanding cooperation will bring more opportunities, growth and prosperity to the countries of the region. This will further strengthen peace in the South Caucasus.
And the announcements didn't stop there. Azerbaijan's Prime Minister Ali Asadov also highlighted the historic importance of the agreements reached under the peace agenda between Azerbaijan and Armenia, saying they lay the groundwork for lasting regional cooperation.
Significant steps are being taken towards the establishment of a unified tariff policy in close cooperation with international partners, the simplification of customs and border procedures, and the promotion of multimodal transport. In support of this, earlier this month, the railway operators of Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Kazakhstan reached an agreement on the application of a single long-term tariff for shipments along the Middle Corridor. The parties also agreed to take joint measures to improve port, railway, and logistics infrastructure, eliminate existing bottlenecks, expand digitalization, and enhance the throughput capacity of the corridor. We are confident that our joint efforts will fully realize the transport and logistics potential of the region, increase trade turnover and investment flows, and strengthen economic ties across the Eurasian space.
Now, alongside this, the EU Special Representative for the South Caucasus, Magdalena Grono, welcomed recent positive steps in the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process. These include Azerbaijan's decision to lift restrictions on Armenia transit and ongoing dialogue between the two countries' parliamentary speakers in Geneva. Grono also praised upcoming civil society talks in Yerevan and plans to relaunch the Gümrük-Kars railway between Armenia and Turkey. Armenia and Turkey will soon hold an interagency meeting to discuss the restoration and reopening of the Gümrük-Kars railway. Armenia's special representative for Turkey met with his Turkish counterpart in Yerevan to discuss bilateral issues. After the talks, officials said both sides agreed to start technical studies on restoring the railway and the electricity interconnector. Staying on Turkey and Qatar have signed a series of agreements and a joint declaration on Wednesday during the 11th meeting of the Turkey-Qatar High Strategic Committee in Doha. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani co-chaired the meeting and witnessed the signing ceremony. The agreements cover cooperation in strategic planning, trade and the defence industry, as well as a joint ministerial statement on commerce and industry. An international symposium on modern models of religious education is underway in Baku. The two-day event brings together scholars, religious leaders, diplomats and education experts from around the world. Here's more.
Scholars, religious leaders, diplomats and education experts have gathered in Baku. They're attending the international symposium, Modern Models of Religious Education, in the context of moral values and global challenges.
The event aims to create a platform for sharing knowledge and experience, analysing current challenges in religious education, both in Azerbaijan and around the world, and discussing possible solutions.
This year's symposium has brought together around 70 researchers from about 15 countries. Today and tomorrow, they are sharing their views and presenting their papers.
Foreign participants say the symposium provides an important space for dialogue and exchange of ideas.
This symposium is really fantastic and wonderful. People from around the world gathered here and they're discussing new ideas about the new models of education and how we can incorporate the moral values and how we can promote moral values through religious education.
The International Symposium will continue until October 23rd. Over 2 days, participants will explore how religious education can promote tolerance, multiculturalism and moral values in today's global context.
A group of world travellers are making a rare two-day journey across Karabakh, exploring how the region is rebuilding and reopening to the world. Reporter Golching Hojalayeva has more.
Here in Aghdam, some of the world's most seasoned travelers are gathering to embark on a remarkable two-day journey across Karabakh. The delegation, organized by Extreme Travelers International, includes adventurers from 8 countries, including Charles Welly, founder of the Global Most Traveled People Network. Over the course of this journey, the team will travel from Aghdam to Khan Kendi, Lachen, Shusha and finally Fuzuli, passing through landscapes that tell stories of both destruction and renewal. In Khan Kendi, they will take part in the ETIC Professorial Exchange Forum at Karabakh University, joining local scholars to discuss culture, travel and rebuilding connections in a region emerging from conflict. This marks the 15th such visit since 2021, reflecting growing global interest in Karabakh's reconstruction, where new cities and villages are rising and families are returning home. It's Gulcin Hojalayeva with Natik Mamedov for A News.
Istanbul is hosting one of the most significant international gatherings focused on protecting our planet's green lungs. The Istanbul Forest Innovation Week is bringing together scientists, forestry experts and industry leaders from across the globe to discuss the future of forests in the face of climate change. Throughout the 5-day event, participants from 75 countries, 30 international organizations will engage in discussions on advanced firefighting technologies, forest fire management and raising awareness about climate-related risks.
In 2021, we had a huge...
Uzbekistan is stepping up efforts to position itself as a regional digital hub through major infrastructure projects. A new partnership with Saudi Arabia's Data Vault aims to expand data capacity and connect the country to a high-speed trans-Caspian network.
Uzbekistan is advancing digital cooperation with Saudi Arabia's Data Vault, launching a large-scale initiative to strengthen connectivity and data infrastructure. The plan includes the construction of data centers in New Tashkent and Bukhara, with a combined capacity of more than 210 megawatts, forming part of a wider effort to enhance the country's digital resilience. Data Vault began building its first 10-megawatt data center in Uzbekistan in May 2024 and intends to invest up to $5 billion in local projects by 2030. The new facilities will support cloud computing, artificial intelligence and government digitalization programs. The initiative is also linked to a trilateral digital corridor between Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, connecting Central Asia with the South Caucasus and Europe. In August 2025, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan announced the construction of a 380-kilometer fiber optic line under the Caspian Sea, running from Aktau to Sumgait, which will provide Uzbekistan with access to faster and more secure data route. Officials say the project will help turn Uzbekistan's landlocked position into land connectedness, making it a key bridge for digital trade between East and West, and supporting its strategy to become a regional digital hub. It is Sivil Rajapov reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
In a major diplomatic move, India has upgraded its presence in Afghanistan, reopening its embassy in Kabul at full capacity. The decision marks a significant shift in New Delhi's approach toward the Taliban-led authorities. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more details.
India's Ministry of External Affairs announced today that its technical mission in Kabul has now been elevated to a full embassy, a move that takes effect immediately. The ministry says this underscores what it calls India's firm commitment to strengthening bilateral engagement with Afghanistan's de facto authorities. During the recent visit of Afghan Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi to New Delhi, both sides agreed to reopen the embassy in full. India's External Affairs Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar confirmed the decision, saying New Delhi aims to deepen cooperation, particularly in development projects, humanitarian support, and capacity building initiatives. Since the Taliban's return to power in 2021, India had maintained only a limited technical mission in Kabul, mainly to oversee aid and infrastructure projects. This upgrade now signals a notable policy shift. The move also comes at a delicate regional moment. For over a week, tensions are high between Afghanistan and Pakistan, with border clashes leaving several dead on both sides. A ceasefire was reached in Doha, mediated by Qatar and Turkey, but the situation remains fragile. Further talks are expected in Istanbul later this weekend. Pakistan, which remains highly sensitive about India's involvement in Afghanistan, is watching closely. Analysts say New Delhi's latest move could reshape and possibly complicate the regional balance of power. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Thanks for staying with me. Now, returning to Azerbaijan and Armenia peace relations, we want to delve a bit deeper into the speed in which progress is being made at the 5th Silk Road International Forum, along with Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's decision to facilitate bilateral transit between Azerbaijan and Turkey. Here to discuss this further is Georgia Ambassador to the UK, Valerie Chicha-Lashvili. Welcome.
Thank you very much for invitation. My name is Valerie Chicha-Lashvili.
Thank you. My first question is, there's so much to unpack here, but Armenian Prime Minister praised Azerbaijan's president to lift all restrictions on the transit of goods from his country to Armenia, calling it an extremely important step toward regional peace and cooperation. How significant is that, and are we moving closer to better ties between the two countries?
No, I think that's very significant, and it's not only in strategic, in a very tactical way, because President Ilham Aliyev made this statement in Kazakhstan while paying a visit to Astana, and he particularly mentioned the deliveries of Kazakh wheat to Armenia. So before these restrictions on the transit of Armenian cargoes were lifted, this wheat was delivered through Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Iran, and then to Armenia. Now it will go through Caspian Sea and directly through Azerbaijan to Armenia, which will definitely decrease. It will be very beneficial for Armenian customers. But what is important that immediately this very kind and timely gesture was reciprocated by Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. Also removing restrictions on transit of cargoes going from Turkey to Azerbaijan and vice versa, and witnessing a completely new phase of bilateral relations development between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but also we are witnessing a state of affairs in the South Caucasus as in the region, because this 184,000 square kilometers build three countries of Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, and it is for us to decide what kind of space we will have here. Space of hostilities and contradictions, or space of peace, stability, and integration. From August and Washington, we are witnessing very positive developments. I think that Tbilisi meetings were a good contribution to this very positive trend.
And Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan also mentioned, obviously, the years that they were warring against its neighbour brought nothing about it, but peace will actually bring a lot of stability and economic fruition and growth and prosperity. Now, with the transit between Azerbaijan and Turkey being proposed, that is something they want to facilitate, what could this look like in practical terms, and how significant is that for the South Caucasus?
Well, it's significant not only for Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, but for the whole Caucasian region, because all countries and these were three prime ministers were participating on this regional growth conference. It was a good demonstration of the fact that countries are seriously thinking about future developments in the region and contribute the attractiveness of the region, which will finally benefit all countries from. And we have to apply this space logic, I think, instead of corridor logic. In mind that to create a situation when from any point of being it Azerbaijan, Georgia, or Armenia, deliveries was to any point in this space will be secure, speedy, and comfortable for owners of cargo, both from the region and outside the region, and it will contribute to the benefit of all three countries. I think that we are inevitably approaching the necessity to create a trilateral forum of cooperation of our countries in the south. Actually, the first step already made when three deputy ministers met in Tbilisi earlier this year on April 17th. That we have to keep dynamic and seriously think about bilateral forum.
And with that, with what you mentioned about how things are moving quite speedily and with great haste, I just want to kind of focus in on that, because things are moving in a place that, to a pace towards peace between the two nations. But where does Georgia sit in all of this? It has always played a role in bringing these two nations together. And I just want to find out what its role is in the future between Azerbaijan and Armenia.
So Georgia traditionally has very good relationship with both Armenia and Azerbaijan. With Azerbaijan, we are strategic partners for more than 20 years. And what is also important that we trilateral cooperation platform, Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and we demonstrate that even in the times of hostility in the region, we can implement a very important project with the beyond our and of global nature, like Baku-Tbilisi, 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 Kars. With Armenia, Georgia also has very good relationship. Since 2 years, we also have quality of strategic partnership with Armenia, and we have a huge diasporas in Georgia, of both Armenian diaspora citizens and Azerbaijani diaspora, also our citizens. So Georgia very, logically and naturally positioned in order to contribute to better understanding and final peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And I think that Georgia is trying to do its best, and these meetings in Tbilisi this year also were a demonstration of this fact.
Well, thank you so much for your insight in that and for joining me this evening, Ambassador. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're now up to date with the world's news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.